Hey everyone, welcome to another Q&A today. Hey Julie, hey, that was very quick.
On time.
Yeah, really quick. I was like getting ready here to have an intro because people take a little bit longer usually to join in, but you were right on time, which is really good.
No worries.
Thank
I
you very
thought,
much for doing this.
yeah,
Uh,
very welcome.
yeah, I think it's the mental side of any sport really is very important for people, regardless whether you're a player or a coach or a parent. So I was thinking it would be a very good idea for us to have a little chat about that. For the people that haven't heard about you yet, although I'm sure that's very difficult. That's not a common situation. But for those who don't know you yet, if you can just say a few words about how you ended up in sports psychology, what made you go through that on that path, let's say.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I guess started my tennis journey like many others of I mean age 5, been taken down to the local club with my brother to do sort of Saturday morning tennis lessons. And that sort of group coaching side. So that was really how I started. And yeah, maybe played my first tournament like 9, and started competing for the county, which my county is north of Scotland, from under 10s, and kind of through that pathway. So yeah, I just kind of loved the problem solving kind of aspects of it, and yeah, not like relying on other people. I quite like that individual side, which is interesting because now I love the kind of team competitions. But yeah, that was kind of how I got into tennis. And then I suppose made the decision when I was 17 that I wanted to kind of carry on playing tennis at university, and decided to go to Loughborough to study and play tennis alongside my degree. So I had no idea at this point that I was even interested in sports psychology. It was like, okay, I like the sound of sports science undergraduate, which I did actually combine with geography. But
Interesting.
yeah, doing that sports science undergrad, I was doing modules in sports psychology and studying, and then playing on the teams and go, oh, this sports psychology stuff's really interesting, and like being able to relate a lot of my experiences on a tennis court to what we were studying. And I think from there that was kind of ignited a bit of passion for performance psychology, because I felt like there wasn't really like a huge amount of support through the pathway. Was fortunate to have some great coaching along that junior pathway, but there wasn't maybe a huge amount of focus or a great deal of support with the mental side. It wasn't really talked about or kind of integrated within the environment. And yeah, just wanted to kind of help that be more the case, and felt quite passionate that players could maybe get more out of themselves and their skills if they were kind of managing the mental side better, or kind of understood themselves better, and how they could get their skills out on court. So that was kind of the in. And then yeah, a lot of studying later.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of. I've read a little bit of you, and I've seen a lot of qualifications and certifications, and you've studied hard and prepared yourself really, really thoroughly in this field, let's say.
Yeah, and I mean, so the training route at the time, because I started with sports science, was then to train in pure psychology. So I did a master's in that, to sort of convert, if you like, and then a master's in sport and exercise psychology. And following that, you do like a chartership process, so working as a trainee for 2 or 3 years, doing case studies, research, and that sort of thing to qualify with the British Psychological Society, who charter psychologists in this country. So
Quite a path, let's say.
say again.
It's quite a long trajectory in a way from when you start learning until you're able to fully practice, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would have made life easier for myself if I'd studied psychology as an undergraduate, because then I could have gone straight on to the sport and exercise psychology. And there are starting to be more options of different like routes in that are opening up. But at the time, that was the order that you kind of needed to do those qualifications in. So
Why do you think at the time, let's say when you were playing, there wasn't much focus on this aspect of the sport, like any sport maybe? Was it a taboo? Is it still a taboo to go to a sports psychologist? Do people still find it difficult to talk about it or to admit that they need to approach someone in that respect?
Yeah, good question. I think you're right. It was definitely at the time like more like seen as kind of deficit focused of, oh, you only go and see a sports psych if you have a mental problem or yeah, and that sort of viewpoint perhaps. I think it was something that I probably felt like at the time, you want to kind of discuss a little bit with coaches, but as well probably and not saying that this is the case for all coaches, but there's not a huge amount of sort of psychology content on the coaching qualifications. And so, I would need that the coach to have quite an interest in psychology to maybe be able to support more with some of those elements. Again, I would say now that's hopefully where we're kind of shifting the dial on that. And then, now I think you're right. Even over the last decade, then I think sports psychology has become a lot more integrated, or a lot more about, okay, how can we help people get the best out of themselves and their skills on a consistent basis, and sort of seeing that as a real area for development. And how can I, maybe a lot of the time where we see the skill levels have, almost like thinking of it not totally maxed out, but they really, it's tweaking the small stuff to get the benefits, and maybe psychology being something that players have explored less. So maybe seeing that as like a bigger room to gain, a room for improvement perhaps. So yeah, and then I think when we see those kind of whether it's a case or being kind of highlighted in the media, obviously, Iga Swiatek, if I forgot the pronunciation of that name right, obviously it was great to see a bit of a feature on her traveling with a sports psychologist and working quite closely, and yeah, just again, those messages coming through around using it to sort of help support her kind of on and off the court.
I think it's really important to have that let's say that person, that extra person that helps you in that aspect, because no matter how much a coach has played competitively in their career, let's say, and no matter how much in touch you are as a coach with your own thoughts on court or just feelings and everything, I think it's quite, you can't really relate to the player that much maybe, and you don't have the professional skills necessary for that job, I think so.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously in my work, it's not just with players, it's sort of supporting coaches as well. And often I'm very keen to kind of work with and through coaches, because often you're the people that have the relationships with the players and spend a lot more time with them than I necessarily will if I'm engaging with the player. So I think that can be really key. But you're right, sometimes they might see the game in a certain way, or I guess personality wise have been challenged by different things. So yeah, there's kind of an understanding yourself and others and what makes them tick, and all sorts of things like that can be kind of helpful in training and preparing a player for those demands.
Who do you feel is making the decision of coming to you to ask for help? Is it the coach that kind of tells the player you need to do this? Is it the parent or the players themselves? They realize that. What's the case usually?
It can be a total mixture, to be honest. Sometimes it is the player driving it. Just understanding actually, if I could get better in that area, then that would really help me sort of get more out of myself. Yes, sometimes it's something that's been highlighted by the coach, or the coach feeling like, oh, I feel like I've tried everything that I know or that I can do. I've kind of almost exhausted what I feel like is within my skill set. So perhaps them recognizing and wanting that kind of extra support. And and again, whether that's then working with the coach to help the player or working more with the player. Yeah, equally, I think, driven by parents. Obviously, we know that parents watch a lot of matches, and coaches often, don't see as many matches. Hopefully they see some, but so maybe the parent is seeing, the raw emotions, the things support, and I think they always want to help and support the best that they can. So yeah, sometimes from parents, and then I think also like steps back of working with some academies or kind of organizations where actually it's a little bit more about the kind of the system and the environment, and obviously we know that that there's a sort of social and environmental influence on behavior and our thoughts and feelings and that sort of thing. So where we can sort of develop that, then that can often be helpful as.
And why do they usually come to you? Or are there a few things that are quite common when players come to you, or when they need your help?
Yeah, so I think it can obviously be like a specific thing that they want help and support with. So maybe a specific aspect that they've identified, some tendencies, some things about how they handle certain situations. So confidence and anxiety would be kind of some buzzwords, I suppose, around that. But equally, as I say, it can just be someone almost wanting to explore like this area, just feeling like maybe it's something that they haven't had that much support with, or maybe engaged with in the past, and interested about understanding my stress response and understanding what maybe I could do when the nerves kind of kick in. So it doesn't always have to be something specific, and as I say, it can also be a little bit wider, or kind of supporting a group of players within a squad setting or an academy, that sort of thing. So I like to try and get on court a little bit too. I wouldn't say I am a coach, but I have like my coaching up to level 3, the qualifications wise. So I do find sometimes that players, that they kind of maybe get it more when it's going on court, or you can maybe put them in situations where they start to feel some of those feelings like they get in a match, and
pretty hands-on.
I think sometimes, especially maybe with slightly younger players, it's just that getting it when it's happening, or as well for me it's helpful, you get some like insights as well into what they're thinking and things like that, because compared to observing technical skills, for example, it's it's observable in terms of body language and behavior, but actually there's a lot like happening up here. So trying to get kind of an insight into that often as well.
I think a lot of players, let's say, don't really realize that maybe a bad result or a bad outcome, it's not necessarily due to something wrong in the technique or their game plan necessarily. It just has to do with what they feel on court, what their thoughts are. Probably. So
Definitely.
That's good if you can be there with them and just see them exactly how they react in the moment, let's say, because it's fairly easy to talk about it a week later, maybe, when you're very, you're pretty much logical about it, and you can see things a bit more, a bit clearer.
Yeah, and again, that's the challenge, for coaches, getting that feedback a week later, and especially if they weren't there, they have to kind of take the player's word for what happened, and obviously it's biased based on the outcome and how they've maybe interpreted that situation since, compared to if you'd seen it and they say, oh, my second serve was rubbish, and then you watch the match and actually you see that it only happens at these certain times where there's maybe more on it, and you see kind of what happens. You might kind of work on something different, or kind of understand, like you say, is it technical, or is it just when the pressure's on that we see, the arm slows down, whatever it is, that then, probably gives you a slightly different thing that you might work on with a player. So yeah, I think we do have that challenge in terms of connecting the dots and getting kind of accurate feedback as a coach as well, based on what's happened.
Yeah. And you work a lot in tennis and in cricket as well.
Yeah.
Are there different challenges, like from the mental side of things?
Like yes and no. Obviously, you know, a lot of sport kind of shares some of the same demands in terms of, you know, like having uncertainty of the outcome, because that's why sport's exciting, isn't it? It can often be on a knife edge and we never know, yeah, who's gonna get the win in the end. That's why we're all, yeah, hooked onto kind of watching it. So yeah, and yeah, the brain doesn't massively like that uncertainty, so there's always yeah, managing that and kind of the what's going to happen as well. I think, you know, you've got kind of judgment externally from you know, expectations kind of going into matches, whether, you know, you're the favorite team or the favorite player. I think as well, it's quite interesting, like team tennis and cricket maybe share some similarities just in that, like an individual within a team mentality, because as well, obviously cricket being a team sport, but a lot of the performances are kind of individual performers. So yeah, that this does definitely kind of share some aspects. And then as well, I think you've got some of those things like our kind of tendencies under pressure. You know, do people play the same way, or do they kind of go more passive and safe and play within themselves at times for some reasons, or do they go the other way? And I think, you know, we see some players go for big shots when they haven't kind of created the space, and I think you see the same in cricket, that kind of yeah, dial kind of go up and down again dependent on the situation. So that some of those things would be quite similar. As well, another sport where you've got time to think, which we know can again be both like a blessing and a curse. So having time to figure out the plan, what I want to do, but as well, yeah, those kind of susceptible to that overthinking, or yeah, dwelling on something, or yeah, that what might happen in the future.
Would you say it's more of a blessing or a curse in a way, in terms of sports and competition?
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to use it. Sorry, what was that last bit?
Having the time to think about it and overthink things.
Yeah.
Do you think it's actually a good thing, or is it not so good, not that great?
I think it's a good thing if you can manage it well. And of course, we know in tennis that's, you know, well, I've heard different percentages banded around, but maybe like 70 to 80% of the time we're on court that we're not playing. You know, in the points, that's the time kind of between the points. I couldn't give you like an exact figure to be quoted on, but just that idea that actually, yeah, how we manage, how we use that time to reset and so forth. Yeah, it's a blessing if we're able to do that well, but yeah, if we don't manage that well, then yeah, I think it can definitely be that curse more of the time as well.
And just going through, let's say, the age that, you know, based on the age that you're at and the stage that you're at, do you face different challenges as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, we probably get some examples where I think for me it like mainly would be around transitions as opposed to like specific ages. Maybe where, you know, a player's had like some early success playing a certain way, and now they've moved up to the, you know, the next age group, and it's not working so much anymore. So there's almost that conflict between, yeah, being a kind of great and gritty competitor versus developing their game in that bigger picture, longer term aspect. I think as well, with transitions, it's called big fish little pond effect. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's quite big in education. Probably less research in sort of a elite youth sport context, but just this idea that if you're like a big fish in a small pond, which everyone kind of starts out at, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you start to get better and be one of the good ones at your club, or
Yeah.
and then yeah, you kind of move up the next level, don't you? Whether it's county, into regional, national, that sort of thing. And I suppose yeah, every time like you're kind of start off at that next level, maybe as a smaller fish in a big pond, and just what that does to your self concept and yeah, sense of self. So there's a lot of studies where yeah, when you're the big fish in the small pond, that and again, education setting, so academically, if you achieve like the same thing as somebody who's the small fish, that like you would feel more confident and more you know, good in your skills than the person who's achieved the same results but is surrounded by people who are quite academic.
Mm-hmm.
So just that idea is quite interesting, kind of translated into sports a little bit around your frame of reference. And I suppose you hear that quite a lot banded around. Oh yeah, they're a good player, or yeah, or players asking, oh, are they good?
Yeah.
It's always like, I always go, well, right, well, what's your frame of reference? Like, what's good? Is it good in terms of like the general population of people playing tennis, or is it good in terms of yeah, like a regional standard player? Like, so I think that's always quite interesting, just around the transitions and how people kind of negotiate stepping up to that next level and the next level, particularly if they're not maybe experiencing kind of tons of success, or equally maybe they're in some squads where they're a bigger fish versus a smaller
Yeah.
fish, if you like. But yeah, sorry, enough about fish.
No, it makes a lot of sense because I was gonna ask if that might be the reason why we see a lot of good players at 11, 12, 13, and then from like once they reach to that 14, 15 age, they just kind of something happens.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
can't tell you yeah necessarily, but yeah, it is interesting. And I guess the other main point around like age and stage stuff is just what we know about like adolescent brain development. And you know, it is maybe takes us adults kind of casting our minds back to yeah, like what was important to you as a 13, 14, 15 year old. And just we know that the emotional brain is more developed than the logical side, and therefore more powerful, hence why teens are kind of more impulsive and make riskier decisions, all that sort of stuff. So I think that is or yeah, just in general have quite intense kind of emotional experiences. So I think that's always yeah worth bearing in mind and considering. Yeah, that they're kind of going to make some of those rash decisions and things as well. So I think yeah, there's a lot of brain development, a lot of developmental changes over that period. And I use adolescence in like a broad sense. I kind of probably mean an age range from like 11 through early 20s. That yeah, we see some of those changes, and yeah, slightly different for different people.
Yeah. I think it's connected to what you're saying. And one of my questions was, why do girls tend to leave the sport earlier than boys usually do? Because, I mean, I don't have a statistic right now, but just in terms of like my own experience with people that I've known throughout my whole career, let's say, that has been the case. Girls usually tend to just do something else or give up a little bit earlier than the boys do.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, and it's a really good question. And yeah, I don't think I have, you know, a definitive answer. And I guess there's a whole host of reasons why that might happen. You know, least of all, kind of, I guess, societal expectations, perhaps, or I think sometimes with the boys, maybe arguably there could be more like social status attached to being good at sport. I
Okay.
don't know. I'll kind of put that out there, perhaps. I think, yeah, obviously, girls maybe the obviously we maybe start with fewer girls in the sport, but I think if the pool gets kind of smaller and smaller, you know, you're playing like the same people kind of all the time, that can be challenging. Certainly, you know, up in Scotland that was definitely the case. Maybe
Yeah.
a lot less so down here where there's more players, but yeah, so maybe those kind of smaller draws and things. I think, you know, where there's team competition, I think that's fantastic for keeping girls involved. That's certainly something that I mentioned before. Like I kind of loved playing for, whether it was club, district, county, kind of throughout the junior side of things, and then on into university and team tennis and things beyond that. So I think that's kind of, and maybe as well that more like the friendship side of things might be quite important to the girls, and sort of keeping that side of things. Yeah, I mean, I think we used to have the AASE scheme here, which was quite good at I guess bridging that gap, if you like, between and maybe there's like a focus on, you know, younger players and things a little bit more, but just if people wanted to go to university, which we know maybe like 50% ish do, then it was sort of for 16 to 18-year-olds, and it kind of bridged that gap. We don't have that kind of program anymore, but just for kind of keeping people competing during those years, because I'm quite involved with the sort of British universities sides, and we know that there's just fantastic opportunities for people to play and compete at, you know, at any level that they want to, really. And whether it's more like the social tennis side, you know, through to competing at the highest level, there's really strong programs both in the UK and in the US as well. So I think maybe it can feel like there's kind of less tennis or less people involved or things as you're kind of 15, 16, 17, but actually those opportunities kind of open up again, maybe at university, and I'm sort of guessing or sensing how that might feel through the kind of older teenage years. But sure, there's lots of different interests, aren't there? And
true.
The
social aspect of things, it's very important, because maybe girls don't realize that there are, you know, they could play for a team and it could be a very sociable environment. So that's why they kind of decide to give up on it, or they just don't find it as fun anymore.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, I think again, it's great when you can sort of get girls involved in coaching programs as well, even if it's, you know, doing their level 1, 2, or
because there aren't any women coaches either. That aspect.
But probably and maybe help some of those girls kind of get that kind of love, what, you know, why they've picked up the racket in the first place. Maybe brings that more, and you know, the sort of younger girls will, I guess, love having that, you know, big sister kind of figure, you know, to help them, and probably makes the older girl feel quite good about themselves, because then when maybe they're playing and you know, the wee girls will watch them and think, oh, they're amazing, you know, as you do when you're that age. So I kind of feel like some of those aspects could be kind of quite effective. But it's a tricky question, and I think one that probably we could kind of look into more and try and understand more as we go.
Going back a bit to the, you know, I think one of the main issues, like you said, with players in general, is just the lack of confidence, basically, in what they can do. Is that just something I mean, because you can't be born with that, definitely. Where does it come from? Does it have to do something with their, does it have to do with the relationship that they have with their parents as well? Is that a big factor that influences their lack of confidence, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one. Certainly, we obviously know that tennis is a pretty challenging sport psychologically. You know, it asks a lot of us from a mental perspective. You know, and just even those aspects of, you know, being out on court on our own with no coaching, or I guess the aspects of, I think one of the really challenging things is kind of like getting no performance feedback from tennis. So obviously, at the highest level, you do get some sort of set summary stats, don't you? First and second serve percentages, etc. But you know, that is just not what we get from sort of domestic junior tournaments. And yeah, I guess compared to a lot of other individual sports where, you know, athletics or swimming, let's say,
Mhm.
where you get a time or a distance, a personal best to judge
Right.
how well I've done on that day against. And, you know, if I jump this distance on the long jump this week and then 4 weeks later I jump further, I'm
Mhm.
going to feel like quite good in myself because I feel like I've improved. Whereas in tennis, I guess, what do we have? Well, we have, you know, whether we won or lost,
Yeah.
and who we played and their rating and my rating and the score, but it doesn't really tell me like a huge amount about, you know, how I played. And
Your performance.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's really challenging in terms of our confidence or sense of competence. And I think that that kind of leads like a lot of players to judge themselves in terms of outcomes because we don't get any of the other stuff, any of the other feedback. So yeah, I can sort of think of how well I've done based
The
on that stuff. I think, yeah, tennis kind of conditions us to see things that way because they're the only things that we have to judge ourselves on. So, and I guess what I'm saying really is that it's not that we can't, like we just have to work harder at going, right, these are my two goals, this is what I've been working on in practice that I want to like bring into the match, and I'm going to kind of judge myself and my performance based on how well I've been able to execute that. And I always I think it would be amazing, and sometimes I put this up in a presentation, but just like a draw. I stole the idea from Chris Harwood actually, so he can take the credit. But you know, like a completed tennis draw, and I would like right next to some of the names like PB or SB for personal best or season's best performance. So like you could lose first round, but there'd be a little like PB next to your name, you know, like you
That's
see in athletics. Because even sometimes you see, I don't know, first round heat that somebody's gone out, but you see personal best next to their name, and you're like, oh, you know, they raced really well for them. And
yeah.
again, that like frame of reference thing doesn't come into it because I'm measuring me v me. Whereas, you know, in tennis, we're always doing that in a socially comparative way of my ranking or rating, their rating, what the score
Yeah.
was, which just doesn't give us that much information about how I've actually
It,
played.
and it's
Um,
difficult to understand that at a very young age because I remember my coach was trying to do the right thing when I was younger, and he was like, "Okay, this match, I'm not interested about the result. I just want you to do this, and then the next match, we just want to get that to happen a bit better. So I don't care if you win or lose, but then you know you're competitive yourself, and you're
but I care if I win or lose.
so you kind of when you're 12, 13, you kind of tend to forget about that, or even if you think about it, it still kind of makes you feel bad that you've lost. Okay, I've lost a day, I've lost, I'm gonna lose tomorrow and another match and so on. So you kind of lose perspective of what your goals are because your results are just not showing that you're improving. Because if you were improving, if you would have improved it, that meant that you had to win that match. I don't know, it's difficult
Yeah.
to grasp.
Yeah, and a little bit, you know, in that example there was, you know, thankfully one where your coach was actually there and watching, so he was maybe, or he or she was able to kind of feedback on that performance. Whereas, like we said, when often coaches aren't there, then yeah, it just kind of leaves the player and the parent to try and kind of interpret what happened. So that can be kind of a tough gig. Yeah, I think tennis parents actually, yeah, they have it pretty tough because yeah, they sort of see everything unfold and maybe try and help their son or daughter kind of make sense of that. But yeah, definitely can be quite challenging. And I think yeah, that's probably quite a big area. And like we said, kind of just joining up the dots on
Yeah.
what happened and getting a clear picture of that.
And I guess it's quite difficult for them to also focus on the goals, like not winning or losing, especially if they haven't played, because their only way of measuring if whether their child has improved or not is if they won a match or not. So it's quite difficult.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's tricky, and I tutor on a workshop. So I'm just plugging you in.
Mm.
That for the LTA that is around that aspect of kind of helping parents, I guess, manage some of that side of things. And kind of, yeah, we talked through, like, I guess, the pre, during, and post match communication side of things. And yeah, certainly, again, so Chris Harwood and Sam Thrower did his PhD on tennis parenting. So yeah, they created this workshop. And I think what's really nice is almost this idea of, and it sounds a little bit formal, but kind of contracting with your son or daughter as a parent around, okay, like, how can I best support you, almost, or yeah, okay, what's helpful from me, or versus like what do you not want me to kind of say or do, and maybe not giving the player like total reins with that, but yeah, I guess just trying to help them kind of understand what's helpful or not to say, because again, I think quite often it's very kind of well intentioned, and yeah, they want to be best support, but yeah, sometimes knowing like how to do that, and a bit like you said, if they've not got kind of a tennis background, or even if they do, I mean, sometimes just as a parent, like, you can't get it right, can you? Like, you're always wrong, or always in the wrong in your child's eyes. But I think, yeah, one of the things that we try to kind of encourage on that workshop is just like how to sort of ask those questions where it's quite open questions. So it's not really like them offering a point of view, which is very easy to do in like parent child, of, I have a view, and my view is potentially, yeah, that's kind of what I saw, versus just kind of asking the player, oh, how was that, like, what did you find worked well, or also, like, if you had the same situation again, like, would you have done anything differently? I suppose that's just those questions where you're kind of being curious, but maybe helping the player to reflect or gain some awareness that they can then go and feed back, yeah, like we said, in a more kind of accurate way to a coach. So yeah, I think that probably is quite a challenging role. And then equally as well, sometimes, like, during the match, I think probably quite challenging for parents not to be able to help their son or daughter when they're getting those glares and things on court, or maybe, yeah, shoot away as well. But just, yeah, I guess trying to help their son or daughter kind of understand themselves.
How can they help, apart, let's say, from asking for your help or attending some workshops that deal with aspect? What else can they do? Can they read about things somewhere, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that probably that there is kind of some reading around it. I mean, oh well, actually, have this book of this is what I was talking about with the kind of brain development stuff. That's an interesting read, definitely more for coaches, parents. So it's called Inventing Ourselves: The Secret Life of the Teenage Brain. But it's all about, like, it's kind of like neuroscience, but just how the brain develops, and like why yeah, kind of explains some behavior that we might kind of see that might not seem kind of rational at those times. I think as well, I mean, like, there's loads of podcasts and things, and whether that is, in tennis or psychology or other sports, there's quite a lot out there, information wise, these days. And as well, kind of watching tennis and maybe watching tennis together, I think that because you see all the top players kind of on the ropes, or you see them also go through the mill in terms of their emotions.
Just
yeah, and you see that the best players are not in control, and that they lose lots of points, and they have to be able to respond and get back on it, and not only, I suppose, watching the matches, but also, like, watching some of the post-match interviews. I think often the players are quite kind of articulate, again, in workshops and things, I always try and, like, play little clips that just give you a bit of an insight into because the journalists are always nosy about the mental side and how they manage that, again, because they can't see it. It's something kind of going on internally, so yeah, it's quite interesting to hear some of their responses. And yeah, I think Nadal, you've seen him talk a lot about everyone experiences doubts, or nobody's too good to make mistakes. And I was like, yes, great messages, Rafa. I'm just like, yeah, kind of sharing.
I hear, because I coach as well, and I hear quite often people that I coach, they wonder like how could have Nadal missed a very easy shot, or how could he be playing badly one day? And it's quite interesting for them that even a player like Nadal or like Federer can get nervous and they
Yeah.
can play badly, let's say.
Yeah, massively. Or yeah, I think team talked about feeling tight in that second set. I
Yeah,
didn't actually watch the match, but yeah, I kind of picked up some of the comments
yeah,
afterwards. And yeah, I think you're right. And I guess that's like, it's normalizing it, isn't it? And I think that's, one of the massive things is like I maybe alluded to at the beginning, like I kind of felt like coming through myself, and whether this is other people's experience, I'm not sure, but in my experience, it just wasn't talked about that much. Whereas actually I think, and this is both parties, it's both players going to a coach, oh yeah, I just felt at the weekend like I just felt really kind of shaky on this shot, or yeah, I felt like I started to play differently on those kind of break points or game points where there was kind of that conversion opportunity, if you like. But equally, yeah, coaches trying to understand that bit and help players with those aspects, and yeah, just normalizing feeling
yeah.
nerves. And actually it's just kind of part of things, and yeah, it's not going to go away. It's something that we've got to kind of work with. And yeah, again, that's similar. I think a lot of players, they fight against themselves, don't they? They kind of fight those thoughts and feelings. Don't want to feel that way, I don't want to think that way, I want to get rid of it, as opposed to going, okay, this is like quite normal for my brain to sort of think negatively, or it's trying to kind of protect me, and then accepting that that's happening, but also I can still commit my attention to something that's going to help me and be productive. So yeah, I think the accountability is with both players and coaches to have some of those conversations. And even like you say, just knowing, oh yeah, the top players, miss smashes on crucial points as well, or yeah, that they get nervous and tight and sort of lose a set. But then as well, I suppose the biggest bit was then responding in the third and creating more opportunities as well.
Something that, I mean, it is related to this, and it's something that's also quite, let's say, important for me as well, because it's what do you think it's best to, as a player, to have the classic approach that I personally have been taught: don't lash out on court, don't scream, don't act frustrated, just keep calm and collected?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it good to actually, if you feel like you need to act out a bit or shout or just let that frustration out, is it better to do that? What do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, what have you figured out about that? Because you've clearly been taught or instructed maybe one way, and I'm getting
Yeah,
the sense that wasn't,
it was
or
the right thing to do, because I think that you can be both. I think there are times when you really can when you feel like you just cannot contain that frustration, and the easiest way to forget about what happened and to move on is just to let it go, scream, or say something in that moment, and that means that's it, you've got it out, you forgot about it, and you can focus on what you have.
yeah.
But try and keep it in, it kind of stays with you for like a long time.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I sort of echo a lot of the things that you just said there. I think, and the key point being, and I'm not advocating for angry tennis players and
No,
rapporteurs
of course.
and so forth here, but kind of just that point of, yeah, venting essentially as a coping strategy. But like you say, if it is that one shout or burst of kind of frustration, and then that allows me to let it go,
Yeah,
then in the short term, I think that certainly, yeah, that if that strategy is helpful. And I suppose that is do you then let it go, or is it when I suppose you start on that negative, that downward spiral? Because
true.
I suppose what we're saying here, and probably for me, a lot of kind of mental toughness, it's not that, like you said, of showing no emotion, no sign of weakness, anything like that. It's more
Managing.
Yeah, and I think I often talk about, that downward spiral of something happens, an event, and it's kind of that letting it affect you, letting it frustrate you or
Mhm.
upset you, whatever it is on court, versus the best players and the most mentally tough players. If something happens, and again, they might still experience those same frustrations, disappointments, setbacks, etc., but just their ability to kind of get back on it, and yeah, different players do that in different ways. And yeah, I think certainly, tennis is quite an intense, can be quite a frustrating sport, obviously, because yeah, we've not got anyone on court with us, and it can be quite like a public space as well. So sometimes that letting it out, yeah, can be helpful. Equally, maybe you might explore if that's the only way, or you might get a player who says, oh, I do this and it does get it out, but actually, I'd love to be like a bit less um angry on court. But equally, tennis, often coaches talk about like an extension of personality, and I think it absolutely can be. And sometimes I think, yeah, when we sort of want people to behave, like robots, and just
Yeah,
sticking that box, and that's not always helpful. And I think again we see that, some of the French players, that they'll be quite up and down, but that is, you can see their personality, can't you, coming through. Other players we watch that are very kind of maybe intense on court, for lack of maybe a better word. That's maybe not quite the right word, but kind of just really disciplined with sticking to their routines and doing exactly the same between points. Whereas other players, to ask them to stick to that is like, oh, so boring. Don't want to be doing that. So yeah, I think different players, different things, really.
are there some players that you actually really like admire in that sense, that you think they're a very good example of mental strength and just managing their emotions and their negative thoughts on court?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are probably like a lot of good examples, actually. That said, I think equally we've seen probably most of the top players, have those times where things are not going their way. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm struggling, I suppose, to maybe like pick out one specific example. Um, Yeah, I think a lot of them, the vast majority of the time, can be, very
Yeah.
very good at that. And we see a lot of kind of battles, but equally, yeah, we see some of them do the bits of negative kind of self-talk or up at the team. I think a lot of them wouldn't be at the sort of levels they are.
If they wouldn't be mentally strong, yeah, true.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I think a lot of
absolutely.
people would be surprised, or are surprised now, that you didn't pick Federer. Like, he's the
Yeah, yeah, I suppose I probably I think actually Rafa maybe comes to mind
hmm
before Federer, or maybe we've seen
yeah.
Federer kind of switch a few times, more in more recent matches. I think, yeah, potentially, yeah, you're right as well. I think on the women's side of the game as well, we have, yeah, I mean, you could name a lot. One of the matches that kind of comes to mind was the Australian Open final between Halep and Wozniacki, that just, it was just an absolute battle the entire time. And I think, like we said, we sort of see blips, but just their ability to kind of get back on it and fight was, yeah, really really impressive. Um, so yeah, it's kind of quite tricky to kind of pick that.
hmm
Um, yeah,
But
mental goat, if you like, isn't it? Uh, yeah, maybe I'll need to go back and think about that one.
you're right, though. And I think I would personally pick Nadal too. I mean, I've read his book and I understand him a little bit better, but I think he's just a very good example of, um, being having moments when he's insecure, nervous, but being able to still overcome them and just being open about it.
Yeah, and as I say, I think that is phenomenally helpful for players to hear some of those things. And again, Djokovic has talked about like use of kind of mindfulness or meditation,
Yeah.
breathing quite a lot. Either we've seen that courtside, or also him kind of talking about that and some of his approach and gratitude practice and some of those aspects too.
But he's also quite a good example of, you know, being calm at times on court, but also being frustrated and then being able to just go right back at it the next point.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's a very good example in that sense as well.
Yeah.
Going from that, I think we're gonna go through our quick fire questions.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Just to kind of end it on a more spontaneous note. So I'm just gonna start asking you questions and just the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Go for it. So the first one would be, who is your favorite tennis player?
I'm from Dunblane, so it's got to be Andy Murray. With that
good.
one, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Night in or night out?
Oh, I think in these days, yeah. I mean, I would, you know, with the coronavirus, I mean, going out would be nice, but yeah, more the reality of the time.
Favorite film?
Oh,
or films?
I don't know if I have a favorite film. Oh, come back to me on that one.
Okay. Summertime or Christmas?
Summer.
Okay. Favorite place you've traveled to?
Japan. Was in Japan last year for the Rugby World Cup, so that was pretty good.
Nice. Where in Japan?
We travelled all around, so yeah, watched Scotland play a couple of matches, but yeah, did Tokyo, Hiroshima, Osaka, Kyoto. Yeah, lots of different.
Would you live in Japan?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm quite like a home kind of anyway, so yeah, but yeah, Japan was great. My brother's in the States, so yeah, been over there a fair few times as well.
Cool. Meat, fish, or vegan?
Fish. Good omega-3.
Tennis or cricket?
Oh, tennis. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have a bit more of a background in tennis, but I am enjoying cricket actually. Which yeah, I think I've become a cricket fan. Which
I need to get there because it's not my favorite sport, to be honest. But who knows? Favorite dessert?
Oh, sticky toffee pudding.
Nice.
Maybe cheesecake.
Okay. Different choices, but very good.
Yeah, depending on the mood, I think.
Early morning or lion?
Early morning, seize the day.
Oh, good. I'm adopted. And the last one, Marmite or Brussels sprouts?
Neither.
That's what I would go for as well.
Yeah.
Marmite is not my favorite thing. Oh, yeah. Those were the quick fire questions. Very quick.
Well, did I pass?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, welcome. Good to flesh out a few themes and hope some folks find it interesting or useful. Maybe.
Definitely. I think it's a very interesting topic, and I think it's something that everyone struggles with, even non-players, non-sports people.
Yeah.
Day-to-day life, especially in these times. So
yeah, and there is a lot more kind of out there, and again, just a lot more talk around kind of mental health, and yeah, I think we can be really more proactive. That's kind of a word I quite like around psychology. Can we be more proactive with helping and supporting people with the sort of mental aspects of tennis and life? That was what my master's thesis was psychosocial skill development in elite youth tennis. So looking at what skills that we learn and develop in those environments. So yeah, maybe
one good thing that came out of these 2 lockdowns, I think people have started being more aware of their own health, like emotional health and mental health. I think they're starting to take a bit more care of themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and equally, I think I lost you there. And sorry, equally just to explore, I guess, yeah, the mental side, I think it has maybe given people a little bit more kind of space. And I think you see a lot of kind of academy programs or clubs kind of doing some online sessions and things. Or yeah, just a bit of room to kind of develop in that area where, yeah, maybe they're not able to get on court as much. So yeah, hopefully some good things to come.
Good. Well, thank you very much again. It was really nice to see you. Found out some really interesting things about myself and others as well as a player, let's say. Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to chat again soon.
Sounds good. Yes, yeah. Hope to see you in person.
In person, yeah.
Not too uh, long future, hopefully.
Sure. Well,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. See you soon.
See you.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.